Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. I have to tell you, I sent your tweet about my mom's pin that I gave you. I sent that to my sisters, and they were so excited. They love you so much. They're such a fan, and they were like, oh, Jill Wine-Banks tweeted, and then they asked me which pin it was, and I said it was a beautiful blue crystal pin for the Sexy Liberal Blue Wave tour that you did in Chicago.
I will post a picture of it because it's a pretty pin that would have counted in my early life as just an accessory because it was so pretty.
Yeah.
But it's so meaningful because one, it was your mother's, and two, it's blue.
Yeah.
And gets to be part of my pre-election blue coverage and the sexy blue wave show that you do.
Yeah. And by the way, I always say I feel like we're connected that way because we always talk about how my dad's running mate Goldwater was the one that told Nixon it was time to go, and it was just a different Republican Party. So we gotta bring us. I mean, first of all, what is the time frame once someone gets a target letter? What does this mean? The news we just heard today.
Well, there's no set time that we could predict safely. What we do know is he's been given 4 days to say whether he wants to testify before the grand jury and come in and give his side of the story, which of course he will not do. His lawyers will absolutely not let him do that. There is no benefit to him in doing that other than adding perjury charges, no doubt.
Yeah.
And so that means to me that after that 4 days expires, the grand jury could be ready to indict. And so we could see it at the end of this week,
Travis.
the beginning of next week. So there you go.
Lovely parting gift for Travis Bone.
Thursday. Come on. Come on Thursday.
Come on Thursday.
Can't you extend to Friday? Because I think Friday is much more likely.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll happen at 9:00 on Friday, right after my last show ends. Jody, have fun.
Jill, I mean, you make a good point, though, that like all of the stuff he says publicly or truths or whatever, you can't, no lawyer can use that, right? He just stood up the other day, right? He said, "Does Presidential Records Act lets you take absolutely anything you want. It's the law." But you can't argue that in court because it's a lie, right?
It is not legally permissible to make that argument. Lawyers can go pretty far in giving a vigorous defense for their client, but there's a line they cannot cross. And making frivolous arguments that have no basis in the law is one of those things you can't do. That's why Rudy Giuliani is being disbarred. That's why Sidney Powell is. And so I think lawyers now are smart enough that they will protect themselves and they won't go past the line.
Does the fact that Rudy Giuliani did not get a target letter mean that he is cooperating, that he went beyond his proffer?
Well, or that he gave a really good proffer and they've decided to use him. We don't know. And of course, we only know that he says he didn't get a target letter. And I can't imagine that this indictment is going to be only against Donald Trump. First of all, it will surely include conspiracy. And although you could indict someone with unindicted co-conspirators, and remember, that's what we did with Richard Nixon. He wasn't charged. He was listed as an unindicted co-conspirator. So his statements were admissible because he was a co-conspirator. But it is very unusual. I've never heard of a conspiracy case with one person. You usually have other people who are part of the conspiracy, unless 100% of them are cooperating.
Jill, I'm sorry. I've had 3 hours of sleep in a week. I'm spacing on why was Nixon an unindicted co-conspirator? Was it still the rule that you can't indict a sitting president? What explain that?
Well, yes, it was. Let's just put it on Leon Jaworski, who was by then the special prosecutor. And he felt while he was sitting president that it would be unwise to indict, that impeachment was the right method. And there was a legitimate impeachment going at the time. But once he resigned, after your father's running mate went to the White House and said, "You will be convicted. You don't even have my vote." That's when I went back to Leon and said, "Okay, you said that it would interfere with the running of the office of the president to indict a sitting president. He's now a private citizen. He is not the president." And Leon Jaworski said, no. And we argued and argued. And in the time it took, as I was trying to persuade him, and I and others were trying to persuade him, he got pardoned. And our research showed that a pardon is forever. There's nothing that you can do about it.
No, I mean, we've been talking about this all morning, Jill, how the GOP has become a lawless party. Like, you can't indict him when he's a sitting president. Impeachment is the right route, and then they vote against the impeachment. And now they're like, oh, well, you can't indict him because he's running for president. There is no law saying you can't indict someone that's running for president, right?
There is not. There's an Office of Legal Counsel opinion from 1973, and it was then revised more recently, but still says you can't indict a sitting president. I believe that to be wrong legally, constitutionally. I don't think there's any reason why you can't, and especially when there is no alternative, as in there is no legitimate possibility of a fair hearing in an impeachment trial. So, yes, there is no law against it. On the other hand, he's just an ordinary citizen now, and he's going to get indicted, and that's good. We'll see what it includes.
Yeah, you tweeted, actually, Trump motion for delay is based on politics, not law. It's totally wrong in saying such a trial cannot start in 6 months from indictment. My team's Watergate trial started 6 months after indictment, and that included our going to SCOTUS during that time and Nixon resigning.
Exactly. There's that his request for delay to an indefinite thing will be decided today.
Yeah.
And so that's, there's a hearing. It's interesting. He gets this letter. He announces it today. He had it on Sunday. What happened on Monday? Why was he quiet on Monday? I don't know. But now he's announced it, and he still has to go to court and defend about the trial date for his Mar-a-Lago holding of confidential documents. And he still faces Georgia, and he still faces New Jersey, a federal case in New Jersey for disclosing documents. So there you go. He's got lots more.
He's so transparent. We were talking about him sucking up to Judge Cannon. She loves this country. Love Judge Cannon. So great. I mean, what's your take on, is she going to be a real judge, and what is the time frame for that?
First, I think that she may have gotten the message by the slapdown she got from the appellate court. She really was just reamed by them.
Yeah.
Secondly, the law is so clear here that you cannot possibly have a trial date, indefinite date. You have to set a particular date. And the December date is perfectly reasonable. And you cannot say, we'll do it sometime after the 2024 election. That's ridiculous, because that also means that if he's elected, then you're trying to have a trial of a sitting president, and that gets into the Office of Legal Counsel problem. So, yeah, I think at least on the issue of a trial date, she will set a trial date. It may not be December 10th, but it's not going to be November of 2024. It's going to be maybe December, January. Mm-hmm. And the thing that you have to worry about in terms of your question about is she going to be trusted is, okay, so she sets December 10th, because there's no argument that they have made that justifies delaying beyond that.
Yeah.
And the rule for speedy trial, the law says you have to set a definitive date. It gives you 70 days. You can extend that for certain things, like a hearing about who gets to see the documents and which ones do they get to see. That will extend it. But December 10th would allow for all of that to happen. And she might, though, say, okay, December 10th, then it comes to be November, and she goes, oh, I'll delay that till January. And in January, she delays it till February. Sort of the death by 100 cuts is much more likely than that she will not set a trial date today.
You tweeted, when was it, on the 13th, today's the anniversary of Alexander Butterfield's dramatic revelation of Nixon's taping system. The tapes confirm John Dean's testimony led to convictions and Nixon's resignation. Will Trump tapes do the same? I mean, it is extraordinary the amount we have on tape about Trump, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not every day the way we did in the White House, but the tapes we have are very incriminating and very compelling evidence. So I think they will persuade a jury who is sworn to do their duty to make a decision based on the evidence in the courtroom, that even a Trump supporter is going to listen to the evidence and say, Well, he did say that, and there's no explanation. He doesn't have to testify to say something different, although he is spreading his defense by his, today he said, I absolutely positively believed that I had won the election and that there was fraud. That's his newest Truth Social posting.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and there is a law, a rule that says you cannot be willfully ignorant of the truth and claim that as a defense.
Yeah.
And given the number of people who told him he lost, that there was no fraud, he can't claim that he didn't know he lost.
Right. So obviously this terrifying speech about him increasing presidential power if he wins. I had to save this for you. Plans to centralize more power in the Oval Office stretch far beyond the former president's recent remarks that he would order a criminal investigation into his political rival, President Biden, signaling his intent to end the post-Watergate norm of Justice Department independence from White House political control. I mean, it's the whole, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Like, it makes 2024 even more terrifying, doesn't it?
It does. His remarks at this event for young conservative activists was terrifying. And Michael Beschloss was on with Joy Reid, and his comments were so terrifying about what would happen should he win re-election in terms of his becoming basically, I guess Beschloss said, a dictator, that he would have total power. He would eliminate all the currently independent agencies, everything from the FTC, the FCC, to the Department of Justice, and that he would have total control and do his political will with them. We already know from Miles Taylor's book that he tried all those things as the former president, while he was president. And if anything, he will have more learning behind him now and will do even worse things and may be able to get away with them, whereas there were people who pushed back in the last administration. He's not going to have them in his new administration.
No guardrails. Oh, and also Miles Taylor told us that he wanted to get ladders for cows to get over the wall, so there's no doors in the wall.
Oh, God.
So if you care about the cows, please.
Okay, yes, I'm interviewing Miles Taylor today on iGen Politics for his new book.
Fantastic podcast, that one, and Sisters-in-Law.
Thank you.
But just speaking of, factors in 2016, like Jill Stein, you said Trump says Robert Kennedy's a smart man as RFK makes anti-Semitic and anti-Chinese COVID remarks. I mean, Joe Manchin and No Labels. No Labels is transparent about the fact. They are not some cuddly bipartisan group. They are funded by Republicans to hurt Joe Biden and get Donald Trump back in the White House.
Exactly. And that is terrifying because it only takes a few percentage points to make a difference. A few votes here and a few votes there. And remember, Donald Trump never won the popular vote.
Yeah.
Biden won the popular vote. But if Biden doesn't win the popular vote, and the Electoral College is skewed in a very bad way for Democrats, it means he loses, even though he's been a great president.
Yeah, yeah. And finally, just real quick, speaking of my dad and Goldwater's party, not only not the party of law and order anymore, but not the party of national security. You said the U.S. House is now run by the far right, and they've abandoned even the pretense of caring about our military.
Recruitment and retention of soldiers. It's going to hurt morale. And the Supreme Court, not a liberal icon, said that in the affirmative action case, we're going to let the Pentagon keep using diversity and affirmative action because it's so important for leaders to be the leaders of people who look like them. And so they're letting them do that. At the same time, Congress is saying we are eliminating all diversity training. That is really terrifying and scary. You can't have a diverse fighting force that works together without having that.
Can I just say a couple things? I love you. B, I know we can't have you on camera because of your MSNBC contract. But 3, you have the coolest name in the world. And so I assume that you were originally Jill Wine, and that is Mr. Banks that's walking back and forth across
that is Mr.
behind
Banks
you this entire
one. Yes. say hello to Stephanie.
He's very handsome and romantic. Hi, Mr. Banks.
Hey, Frisbee, say hello to Stephanie. Frisbee is following Michael everywhere he goes. Michael's walking past, he's following him. What can I say?
I've enjoyed it. All right. Love you, honey. Thanks
My
so
pleasure.
much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much
And I'm
for
so
your.
sorry about your loss. I know how much you loved your mother and how much she loved you and how important your care for her was.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to know.
My dad, they didn't like Nixon, so she would have loved you. Okay.